Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to day 2 of Harvard China Education Symposium Annual Conference. My name is Liu Jungjie. I'm studying Technology, Innovation, and Education here at Harvard Graduate School of Education. I will be the host of the first panel today, Education Technology. In this panel, we are going to discuss the potential power of technology in reshaping education in different stages of life, from preschool to higher education. And we are delighted to have 3 distinguished speakers in this panel. They are Dr. Jun Lee, Dr. Jun Lee is the Assistant Vice President of International Research in the Department of Global Education at Sesame Workshop. She joined Sesame Workshop in 2005 and currently oversees the workshop's international research agenda. She directs all of the summative evaluations that examine Sesame Street's global impact and has managed 30 studies. She has successfully engaged with researchers around the world to elevate the qualities of the workshop's formative and summative research. She also oversees content development, research, and outreach activities for Sesame Street co-productions in China, Indonesia, and India. Jun graduated from University of Texas, Austin with a doctorate degree in human development and family sciences. At the university, she was involved in research of the impact and context of children's media as part of the Center of Research on Interactive Technology, Television, and Children, and the Children's Digital Media Center. The second speaker of this panel will be Mr. Mark Wang. Mr. Mark Wang is the co-founder and president of GLR Education Group. GLR Open Course is one of China's leading MOOC platform, which is also the platform for the Open Course database of China's National Digital Library System. Mr. Wang graduated from the School of Economics and Management, Tsinghua University, with a Bachelor's of Engineering and Master of Management. Before founding GLR, he worked as an investment banker in ABN AMRO, Hong Kong, where he participated in over $2 billion capital market transactions. And the third speaker and the moderator in this panel will be Professor Philip DeSalvier. Professor DeSalvier is the Dean of the College of Advancing and Professional Studies at UMass Boston. He graduated here from Harvard Graduate School of Education with a doctorate degree in Administration, Planning, and Social Policy, and he has also a postdoc, Robert Wood Johnson Faculty Fellowship in Health Policy Management, and from Johns Hopkins University. He has over 25 years of experience in academic leadership and scholarship. He has been interviewed extensively in various media publications on the structural changes transforming higher education, academic leadership, and disruptive innovation. In this panel, each speaker will have 15 minutes of individual presentation, followed by 15 minutes panel discussion, which will be moderated by Professor DeSalvier. And then we will leave 25 minutes for the audience to participate in the Q&A session. In the Q&A session, we will take 2 questions at a time. So 1 question from each side. And without further ado, let's welcome the first speaker, Dr. Jun Lee.
Do I need to wear a mic? Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm really honored to be here today among such distinguished company. I certainly don't consider myself an expert on education or on China in any way, but I do know a lot about one piece of education, and that is media, especially as it pertains to young children. So I do work at Sesame Workshop, Sesame Street, and I think I'll start you off with a short video that kind of summarizes a little bit about what we do. If it plays. Interesting, we just tested this and it played.
When my daughter Caitlin, who is now 29, was less than 2 years old, my husband and I took her to the zoo, and she saw a stop sign, S-T-O-P. And she started labeling the letters on the stop sign, S-T-O-P. And neither one of us had even thought about teaching her the alphabet, and we were able to talk to her child care provider who said, oh yeah, she knows her letters from Sesame Street.
That's great.
It's true.
A, B, C, D, E.
I thought it was too early to start teaching letters, and here I am, a developmental psychologist.
It's not whether children learn from television, it's what children learn from television, because everything that children see on television is teaching them something.
2, 3, O's.
Young children are like sponges. They are absorbing 24/7. And consequently, it is really important that their environments, all of their environments, home, school, media, be infused with high quality experiences.
Well, when we don't invest in early childhood education, I think we pay as a nation.
Children who are enrolled in high-quality early childhood programs indeed are referred less for special services, are referred less for special education, and accomplish far more academically as well as socially.
Sally, you've never seen a street like Sesame Street. Everything happens here.
There is a lot of research on the Sesame effect, comparing children who have watched Sesame Street with children who haven't watched Sesame Street. And by high school, there are statistically significant differences between those two groups. Children who've watched Sesame Street, their grade point averages are about 16% higher. That's a big effect.
Sesame Street is a vital component of any country's repertoire of early childhood services.
In Bangladesh, children who regularly watch our Bangladesh production of Sesame Street perform 67% higher in literacy than those who don't watch.
Societies all over the world face tremendous challenges. To miss the opportunity of investing in young children and their development is perhaps forsaking the greatest opportunity for social advancement that they can make.
Our mission is to help each and every child reach their highest potential. We have a model that's proven to work.
So our aim is to figure out how technology, how new tools, how gadgets, how all of that can be brought to bear to help very young children learn and therefore build a better world for us.
Okay, cut it short a little bit. So we are an educational nonprofit organization, and our goal is to really to harness the power of media to make a difference in children's lives, particularly young children. As you see in the video, early childhood education is really critical and brings the greatest returns to investment in terms of future gains in children, and intervening early is especially important. So Sesame Street started as sort of an experiment. It was 1969. It was a very, particular point in American history, the war on poverty, and people really saw education as a way of lifting people out of poverty. And our founder had this idea of using television to provide that educational opportunity, especially to low-income and minority children who really wouldn't otherwise have a lot of other resources for early education. So at that time, we had partners that included Harvard and Jerry Lesser, who's very near and dear to our hearts. He was really one of the pioneers of the model that we use today that combines production, education, and research in creating a media project. We call ourselves the longest street in the world. We are in over 150 countries in some way, shape, or form. In about 30 of these countries, we have localized versions of Sesame Street that are created to meet the educational needs of children in that particular country. So you can imagine a child in Germany has very different needs from a child in Bangladesh. So these are some examples of localized educational focuses in different countries. And these are determined by local educators, not us. We work very closely with the education and academic community in every country that we start a project in. So this is an example of sort of the diversity of different kinds of educational curricula that we address around the world. Our co-productions also have unique characters, Muppets, as you can see. All of the Muppets on screen are created locally by the production teams to represent, the sensibilities and characteristics of kids in that country. I won't go too much into a process, except to say that we have a process, and it really features research very strongly, both during the production process and in the summative part of the production cycle. We really do we do invest a lot of time and resources into research and making sure that what we're doing is educationally sound and that it's having an impact. We're probably best known for television and probably, digital media, online websites, and so forth. But in every country that we work in, we really strive to reach children wherever they are, whether that is through mass media, like television and web, or through community-level types of interventions. We've created print materials for classrooms. We've done teacher training through training videos. We've brought television into communities that don't have access to television or to the show. That's a community viewing piece. So really our goal is to reach children where they are, especially the underserved children. We've had a long history in China, starting from 1983 with a 1-hour TV special called Big Bird in China. It was a co-production with CCTV, and even to this day, I think it's remembered very fondly. It was sort of a cross-national collaboration that was very groundbreaking at that time. And since, Sesame Workshop has worked with various partners in China to produce educational media for kids. We've partnered with Shanghai TV in the late 1990s and had a co-production called 芝麻街. And we've worked with the Beijing Planetarium to produce a show about astronomy. We've done science shows, math shows. Most recently, we, about a couple of years ago, created a new series with ToonMax called Big Bird Looks at the World, 大鸟看世界. And it's really being driven by what we had heard from a lot of educators and parents on the ground. And they really said they wanted their children to be problem solvers, to be creative thinkers, to really engage in critical inquiry, and to be really hands-on about their learning instead of learning by rote. So when you put all these ingredients together, a natural outlet for something like that is really science. It's a great basis for all of these skills that you're trying to build. So 大鸟看世界 in its first season was very science-oriented. And it aired on Haha Channel in Shanghai and was syndicated as well on CCTV. There's a new character that's special to China. Her name is Lily. She's a very cute, rambunctious, willful little tiger. And as well as the familiar Big Bird and Elmo.
哦，小鸟是丽丽。嗨，你们来看我练功吗？来得真好，我在练丽丽拳呢。哈哈。丽丽，快别打了！为什么？
你这样会伤害到小树的。
小树受伤了，我就没法爬树了。
我在练功啊，我并没有要伤害小树。可是丽丽在打树啊，小树掉了好多叶子呢。
小鸟的家在树上，鸟巢要是掉下来，小鸟就没有家了。
那么严重啊！
而且奶奶告诉我，树木对我们的生活也很重要呢。
真的吗？树对我们有什么帮助呢？M也想知道，树对我们有什么帮助呢？
All right, so the premise of every episode is about, something happens to these characters. They're just going about their daily lives. They notice something in their environment or something happens. It triggers a question. And then they kind of go find out more information. They engage in some hands-on exploration to find the answers to their questions. So it's a show that actually did really, really well on Haha Channel. And we're hoping to do, more seasons production. And as part of our research tradition, we actually evaluated the educational impact of this series. It was done by Dr. Xue Ye from the University of Memphis. He is actually also a HGSE alum. And he conducted a summative study with a control group and an experimental group. Kids watched the show over a period of 7 weeks. And he found that children that were watching the show were doing better on these domains of scientific knowledge than children that were not watching the show. And this was great because kids were really just watching the show in their classrooms without any mediation from the teacher. They were just watching it, once a day. So to know that it can can cause improvements in children's learning about science was very encouraging. I'm going to skip through this because I don't have a lot of time, but teachers also had great feedback on the show. Even though they weren't directly using it in a classroom, they saw their kids watching the show and had very positive feedback about it. Outside of the classroom, not even a classroom context, outside of sort of informal, television context, we also do a lot of work with communities and schools. We actually did a project on emergency preparedness with the China Youth Development Foundation. There are many regions of China, as you know, that get hit by disasters fairly often. And there's not a lot of good information for families and young children out there about how do you get ready for an emergency. So we created a kit that had a DVD component, a caregiver guide, and a children's activity book that tells you basic skills that, information that you should know for an emergency, like knowing your first and last name, knowing your parents' names, knowing where you live. Really simple information that a 3 to 5-year-old child can deal with, but that can really come in useful in an emergency. So I wanted to kind of close with this recent study that was published in the Journal of Applied Developmental Psychology. It was done by the University of Wisconsin at Madison, and it's a meta-analysis of all of our research on our Sesame International co-productions from around the world, outside of the United States. So meta-analysis is a study of studies, right? It kind of brings together a body of work and looks across different methodologies, sample sizes, outcomes to see whether there really is a true impact underlying a diverse set of studies. So this body of work constitutes 24 studies, 15 countries outside the US, and over 10,000 children. And they really found that the effect sizes were significant. They grouped the outcomes into learning about the world, cognitive outcomes, your academic skills, and social reasoning, so pro-social attitudes. And the effect sizes were significant. And the overall effect size is 0.29, which is a number that we're obsessed with now at Sesame Workshop. And that translates into an 11.6 percentile difference. So it means that if you have an average child, who is by definition in the 50th percentile, because they're the average child, the difference between a child who watches Sesame Street and doesn't watch Sesame Street is a child that watches Sesame Street is going to be bumped up 11.6 percentile points. And that is, a really non-trivial impact. And this is actually comparable to other early childhood interventions that have been found outside of the United States as well. That meta-analysis found an effect size of 0.35, so a little bit bigger, but comparable. The key difference is that Sesame Street, as a mass media intervention, reaches over 100 million children around the world. So really, it is an example of an enduring and scalable early childhood intervention. If you're thinking of something that can be brought to scale and that can reach children, especially children in need. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the ripple effects that come out of Sesame Street projects around the world. Because we're not just a media project. We also reach into communities. We work with teachers. We tackle really challenging topics around the world. For instance, in South Africa, we have a curriculum that focuses on HIV/AIDS education because that is so important in South Africa. So there are a series of ripple effects that emanate from Sesame Street projects. And we really strive to elevate the importance of early childhood education in country, especially in countries that don't have a long tradition of early childhood education or a lot of support for early childhood education, as well as building capacity in the realms of research, production, kind of everything that gets wrapped around in a Sesame Street project. So my time is up, but it's actually good timing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Joan Lee, for this introduction of Sesame Street and Sesame Workshop. Now let's welcome the second speaker, Mr. Mark Wang. His topic is Open Courses for China.
Hello, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here and to share with you my experience and my view regarding the MOOC development in China. Because since last year, this topic has been very hot one in the States. And usually when there is a very hot topic in the States and something is going to happen in China, and usually the time lag, the jet lag is around 1 year. Like 1 year after Facebook, then there's Renren. 1 year after YouTube, there's Youku. And 1 year after a lot of things, there's another thing coming up in China. So 1 year ago, Coursera and edX launched their first courses through this MOOC platform. So what's going to happen in China? And let me share my experience with you. Since time is quite limited, so there are only 3 questions I want to have a little bit discussion over. First one is why open courses in China? Because there has to be a reason to motivate the universities and students and professors to open their courses online. And second thing is what's going on? And the third thing, of course, is I think a lot of people are looking at is what the future will look like. So first thing I want to discuss is about the reasons that why open courses in China. I think the first thing comes from the demand, because currently we have over 30 million college students. And I think beyond, among the audiences today, many of you have completed your undergraduate education in China. And you have truly experienced the low quality and the poor services out of Chinese higher education system. That's the reality, including me, right? So there's a huge demand. And the other thing is there is an impact from the states, including what Coursera and edX are working on. Currently, because of the wall, if we want to get into Facebook and YouTube, we have to go through the wall, what we call 翻墙, right? So because of wall, we do not have access to the contents of Coursera and edX. But actually, higher level leaders from the Ministry of Education and even from the presidents of different universities, they do have access to these platforms. So actually, these platforms, they do not have a huge impact on current China college students, but they do have a huge impact over these leaders. And the third reason behind that is the highly unbalanced education resources, like Tibet. Currently, we are working with PKU in their supporting program for Tibet University. The traditional way of supporting an education institution in Tibet is one professor from either PKU or Tsinghua University have to spend a whole year in Tibet without the company of his family and without almost nothing. And currently, through this open course platform, actually it is possible to outsource a lot of good content and a lot of good courses to a rural area like Tibet, like Xinjiang, without the professor and without huge amount of traveling. So this is the third reason. And the fourth one is that people often question me is that do we have a large user base or the habits of the students? Can they easily get accustomed to online education? But actually for China, this online education system has been long exist. That's the long established TV-based education platform. What we call in China is 广播电视大学. Currently, this online education platform still has 3.6 million active users who are learning through TV broadcasts and TV videos and getting their degrees from these TV videos. So actually, China is also a pioneer in open courses, but the platform they're using is TV broadcasts, not internet, but still they have it. And the fifth reason I think is the most important one is the employment rate of undergraduate students. Currently, the employment rate from 2013 graduates from a lot of leading universities, the average rate is only around 35%, which indicates the poor job market and the poor education quality. If the education quality is high and if you can make people very competitive, of course, the employment should be higher. So in the macro, from these several perspectives, personally, I believe there will be some MOOC experiments or a potential big MOOC platform in China to serve these students, serve the universities, and bridge the gap between developed areas and underdeveloped areas such as Tibet and Xinjiang, a lot of different places. So that's the why problem. And the second thing I want to discuss is what's going on. Actually, in China's education system, there are three major parties who are playing an important role. The first party also, it should be the government, right? You know, everything is controlled and filtered by the government. So if there will be a MOOC platform in China, of course, there has to be something to do with the Ministry of Education. And currently, under the Ministry of Education, there are two MOOC platforms. The first MOOC platform is what we call iCourses project, actually as funded by the Ministry of Education, and each university under this program will have the opportunity to open 3 to 6 courses. And in order for them to open these courses, they have to apply for fund directly from the Ministry of Education. But the format of these courses are still traditional videos, like a teacher is giving lecture here and will be videotaped, and the video will be checked and edited and filtered, then put online. And there's a very interesting joke that during one of the video sessions, there is a small poster on the back of the professor saying that students should be aware of their personal belongings. And one of the officials responsible for editing these videos see the poster, say it's a bad image for our education system, so they block that video. That's a true story. So based on this story, personally, I don't believe iCourse has a good future because it's not student-oriented. Basically, it's not even education. It's just contents. It's just videos. And another thing is through the National Digital Library System. That's what currently we are working on. Basically, our vision is not to only tape the videos and upload it on Youku or YouTube. What we are aiming at is to provide a whole series of services through this platform, including homework, including credit, including learning progress monitoring, and including a lot of different things for different types of courses. And the second system, of course, is the universities. And in China, if there will be a MOOC platform, of course, it has to get support from these two leading universities. I'm sure some of you are alumni from these two universities, Tsinghua University and Peking University. And currently, Tsinghua University is doing a lot of experiments on online education and blended education, what we call our hybrid education. What I mean by hybrid education is that students have the opportunities to finish like 50% of their study in traditional classroom, and the rest can be finished online. So we are actually experimenting on different formats and on the percentage and on the tools that could be used all through this education process. And also, Tsinghua is going to have a big announcement regarding its collaboration with a leading online platform, but due to confidential reasons, I cannot announce that because it's going to be announced within months. So you should watch the news. And if this thing is announced, then I think it will have a huge impact on the overall landscape of China's education system. And another thing is that Peking University is also doing some experiment. Currently, they have internal target of opening 100 courses in the upcoming 5 years. But I don't know whether that will actually happen in the future because they just switched to a new president. But they're doing some other experiments in the traditional way. Currently, they are selling their credits and their minor degrees to students all over Beijing using like economic degrees or things like that, which is actually quite expensive. So if they can sell these degrees and credits offline, I believe there is a way for them to sell these credits and degrees online. Because from what I heard in Peking U, by opening courses, of course, the contents and the videos can be free. That's one of the mission of these higher education institutions. But if you want to enjoy the service, the training, the mentoring, and the crediting verification services behind that, and there is a good reason they have to charge a high price. I think that's what's also happening in the States right now, right? So the second part is the participation of these leading universities. And third party, of course, are the corporates, including us. The first group of corporates which are working on MOOC are the traditional media, including like CCTV. They have a big show to invite like leading professors from all universities in China to give these lectures online. And the other thing is NetEase. They have been importing open course materials from the States, like the Justice course in Harvard. It has been localized by NetEase by only adding subtitles, right? But from what I understand, it's still media, and the completion rate on these media-based open course platforms are quite low. The reason behind that is students need a very strong motivation to learn and to finish such a long course. If it's only one video, of course anybody can look at that. But if it's a series videos lasting for over like 30 hours in total, then you have to have a strong motivation. The motivation is either the credit behind that, or the service behind that, or the community behind that. So the video-oriented open course is not going to complete the whole mission. And the other side of the corporate is of course the open course platform like us. And currently what we're doing is we're also conducting a lot of interesting experiments online. And we also invited some professors to open courses or trial courses online. Currently there is a professor called James Lee. He's a guest speaker in Tsinghua Engineering University, also used to be the vice dean of business school at Tulane. He opened his courses, and actually his courses are very famous in Tsinghua due to his strong big mouth and his strong criticism against the Communist Party. So very, very, very popular. In his traditional classroom, usually for one semester, there will be only like 50 students attending his classroom, attending his class. And over 10 years, like it only has like accumulated several hundred students over the years. But right after we posted his courses online, in 3 months, it's already like 30,000 students viewed his videos and have interactions with them through Weibo. And unfortunately, his Weibo is recently blocked, and all the data are cleared suddenly, all of a sudden. No followers, no contents, nothing. It's only the username and password were not changed. So unfortunately, but still we opened a platform for him to express his views. And unfortunately, some of the videos we also have to filter and check to avoid being shutting down by the government. So and currently Professor James Lee also entering a competition against a professor from University of Hong Kong. And he is monitoring the number of students and the number of views every day over his courses. So that's what's going on. And since I only have a few minutes left, then what the futures will look like. In the States, I think what we understand for MOOC is it's an internet-based learning platform. But I think in China, if this thing is really going to happen, if we're really willing to complete the mission of education, of improve the quality of people, I think it will be a combination of online education and offline services. Currently, we are already trying to set up like training centers in Beijing, in Shanghai, and in Guangzhou. So once students view their contents, like videos or textbooks from a website or from their mobile devices, including iPad and iPhone, we still have to offer them an opportunity to have live interactions, either online or offline. We still have to have some local TAs or local instructors or even local nannies to monitor the learning progress, to facilitate their learning and to give them very strong motivations. And the courses can be delivered through these platforms or either skill-based, what we call hard demand, like English skill training or vocational training or working skill training, or either higher education courses that can be monitored and can be credited. So currently, it's all experiments because we have no clear idea what is going on and what is going to look like in the future. But personally, I believe there is going to be a platform which can combine the offline training and online education together. So together we can provide higher education services to students all over China. And also we can bring in a lot of high quality education resources from all over the world, including the States. Currently, I think what Coursera and edX are doing is to adding subtitles to English content so that Chinese-speaking students can learn from that. But actually, our view is that we do have the ambition to invite some Chinese-speaking professors to produce the contents in Chinese, so these contents can be delivered directly to students all over China via our platform. So I do know that a lot of people are interested in MOOC, and a lot of people are interested in the education transformation in China. So finally, a little bit of promotion here is that if anybody is interested in this, and anybody is interested in discussing a little bit further on what's going on, please contact me, and I'll be here for the whole day. And hopefully together we can make things happen. And there is a big chance that we're changing the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, for this insightful presentation. And myself is a big MOOCaholic, which means a big fan of MOOC. I also help one professor here creating a MOOC course for edX. And in this, our third speaker, Professor DeSalvio, will give a big picture perspective of the disruptive power of technology in higher education. Let's welcome him.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I thank you for inviting me. I'd like to talk, as Joji said, about sort of the big picture with the disruptive power of technology. And I always like to look at the past to help predict the future. And I want to point you to two interesting Western philosophers who lamented the rise of writing before we all really thought about what the impact of writing will be. Socrates lamented the rise of writing. He said he was sure it would creatively disrupt his comfortable little seminar and undermine authority. So he warned us against writing. Plato said that writing should be mistrusted because it brings the appearance of wisdom instead of wisdom itself. And he said that writing would produce forgetfulness. Those two great Western philosophers were wrong. And I think many still share skepticism, the same kind of skepticism, about new educational technologies. And the fact that he used the word creatively disrupt was very convenient for us, because we are really talking about disruptive technology today. I would point to you that there really is a convergence of forces driving change in higher education. And these forces are going to change how we think about higher education, how we think about the purpose of a university, what we think teaching and learning is all about. And I'm not sure, as Mark said, the future of where educational technologies are going to lead us and where events are going to take higher education. But we know that higher education is changing dramatically, and it's changing fast. And I think about the future, and I think about the great philosopher Yogi Berra, who said that it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. But things are changing, and things are changing fast. An example of this is the sensitivity that we all have about what disruptive learning technologies are all about. And I think we all know that it's having enormous impact on higher education. When we talk about disruption, we typically talk about new technologies that unexpectedly displace established technologies. Mark talked about that in his reference to television being replaced by online learning. And that's a perfect example. Online learning has displaced many traditional technologies. I don't see a blackboard in here anymore. I grew up with blackboards. I grew up with overhead projectors. I don't see any overhead projectors here. What I do see is a whole new set of educational technologies that are disrupting higher education. And internet-based communications technology really provide an unparalleled capacity to reach new audiences. And again, I think about June and the kind of huge impact the disruptive technologies that are being used by Sesame Workshop. So online education in general is really upending higher education today. And I point to certain facts, that the rate of growth in online enrollments is 10 times the rate in all of higher education in the United States. And the number of higher ed students taking at least one online course has reached 6 million. Online enrollments are increasing at quantum speeds. Third of all American higher ed students have taken at least one course online. By 2015, it's predicted that 25 million post-secondary students in the United States will be taking at least some of their classes online. And by 2018, there will be more students enrolled in online courses, full-time online classrooms, than students who take their classes completely face-to-face. So we are looking at a brave new world. We're looking at a brave new world spurred on by advances in internet technology, by software, and really public perceptions towards collaborative learning. And what I mean by collaborative learning, I'm talking about students interacting, students and instructors interacting, and that kind of synergies that take place in true learning. The disruptive learning technologies that we're talking about really makes time the variable and learning the constant. Class is open 24/7. Access to class is 24/7. Interaction can be 24/7. And so when we talk about any time, any place, it's true. We are also seeing a multitude of knowledge providers. That's sort of a disruptive educational term too. Universities thought they were only the knowledge providers on the landscape. Well, that's wrong. Modes of delivery in the form of instructions that in courses really are becoming more aligned with the needs and demands of students' lives. And so the focus shifts from teaching to learning. And that revolution is coming up from the learners itself. They are demanding the leveraging of new technologies. And think about the power of disruptive technologies. A single master teacher can reach students on an individualized basis on a scale that was unimaginable 10 years ago. You know, the first MITx open courseware MOOC reached 160,000 people. Millions of people now are enrolled. Millions of people are enrolled in MOOCs today. And much to the chagrin of skeptics, what we're seeing in research is that higher education students in online learning generally perform better than those in face-to-face courses. We all still face the skeptics in disruptive learning technologies. But I can tell you, and most people will agree, that the higher education market is primed for disruption, with disruptive learning technologies really providing the context and opportunity that drive the change. What we're seeing are a number of other changes. For example, the learning landscape, at least in America, is linked now, becoming linked more and more to return on investment. There's growing annual debt burdens. The annual price tag for a college credential in the United States has risen dramatically. And the most powerful of these converging forces is really the crumbling formal learning environments. Open resources, learners finding their own path to knowledge, self-learning. I've been hearing the phrase recently, hacking in education, hacking in higher education. You can learn today from leaders in the field, leading thinkers in the field, taking courses from those leaders in every field. And the opportunities that present themselves are enormous. And I often, when I speak, talk about the notion that when other industries are disrupted, those who don't innovate go out of business. And I can tell you, I think that's going to happen in higher education. It's not unexpected that every upgrade, every shift from the old to the new is going to create concern, and there is concern, but things are changing fast. And a good example is elite universities like Harvard and MIT and Stanford, Berkeley, have all seen the writing on the wall, and that much of their future is leveraging learning technologies. And we are going through a paradigm shift. We're going through a shift on how to teach and how people learn. We went through a shift 600 years ago when medieval theological elitist universities became the universities we saw today. And I think most people agree that this paradigm shift is occurring. When I talk about change in higher education, I refer to the fact that universities traditionally are operating under the same kind of university structure as Oxford and Cambridge did 1,000 years ago. That the traditional agrarian calendar with fall semester and spring semester, the lecture system, where people convene at one place at what time, are now out of date. That traditional higher education, up until recently, hasn't changed very much. So now we're going through change, we're going through transformation, and it's all, I think, driven by one of the major forces driving change in higher education today, and that's disruptive technology. So I offer those thoughts to you, and I hope we can consider some of these thoughts, and we can also talk a little more about them with our panel. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Professor DeSilva. Now we have 15 minutes for the panel discussion. Professor DeSilva will be the moderator.
Sure. Well, both of you gave very interesting presentations. I'm going to put this on, taking advantage of disruptive technology here. Rather than using a megaphone, we'll be using this. Well, I thank my panel colleagues for very interesting presentations. June, your presentation about international co-productions really were poignant because you talk about reaching 100 million people, changing the lives of 100 million children and their parents as well. And I want to talk a little bit about your media project and education. And I think one of the most interesting parts of that is the cultural awareness that that Sesame Productions has, most emblematic by the different kinds of puppets that deliver the product. And you talk about the impact of technology using media through TV. Do you find that the disruptive technologies that you're using have certain differences in countries, the way they're received and how impactful they are?
That's a good question. Good question. Okay. I'm not sure if television at this point in history is thought of as a disruptive technology. It's certainly been in children's lives for a very, very long time. It's very pervasive in most parts of the world, not all. And where we found clearest differences in the impact of a medium like television is that in places where there isn't a lot of alternative educational resources, for instance in Bangladesh, we had fielded a study there that really showed that even with not a lot of exposure, with some frequent exposure to Sisimpur, our co-production there, children were making significant learning gains. Whereas probably a higher dosage would be necessary, for a place like the United States or a lot of other parts in the world where there are a lot of educational resources, where Sesame Street in a lot of ways is just a drop in an ocean of media choices. So yeah, I think that where we're potentially having the greatest impact is actually where the need is the greatest, and that's really very much in line with the mission of the company. Yeah.
I want to follow that up with some of your thoughts on the future of educational technologies and the future of the media, the media tool of TV. Do you see technologies coming down the road, learning technologies coming down the road that will change what Sesame will be offering to its viewers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think right now one of the big sort of themes that we're kind of puzzling through as a company is this whole issue of transmedia and cross-platform. So it's really about utilizing the strengths of each medium to do what it does best, right? So it's not about putting the same content on every platform, I think, because different media have different strengths. Something like television is great for a linear narrative, for telling a story, for getting you invested in characters, and getting the child feeling like they know the character and that they're friends with the character. Other platforms like online platforms or tablets lend themselves well to shorter experiences that are interactive in nature. So I think it's about leveraging the strengths of each platform to do what it does best, and also being able to be really sensitive to children's developmental needs and their, what they're able to do with each platform. With touchscreen technology and tablets, that's kind of opened up a whole world of possibilities for young children in terms of what they can do with, with sort of computing technologies. That wasn't quite possible when you had, a computer monitor and a mouse, because that one-to-one correspondence is really difficult for, 3 or 4-year-olds. Whereas a pad you've all seen, 1, 2-year-olds really being able to navigate it fairly well. It's really astonishing. So we're doing a lot, certainly on the digital front, and also trying to figure out how to leverage content across platforms in an efficient and cost-effective way, because we are a nonprofit. So we also cannot be producing for different things for every single platform. So it's kind of finding that unifying thread as well. So it's challenging.
Let me end this part by really imagining the future. When you retire 40 years from now,
40 years. Oh, wow.
I want you to imagine what Sesame Productions will be like. What will it be like? You suggested evolving technologies, using iPad and it becoming more interactive. Think about it. 10 years ago, we never heard of Facebook. 10 years ago, iPad and iPhones were just a dream. Mobile apps didn't exist. Can you imagine what it will be like 40 years from now? Can you sort of predict the future?
Oh gosh, I'm not a futurist. We actually had a futurist come in and talk to the company about where things are going. And basically, everything's going to be more and more integrated with, Google Glasses being sort of an example of that. You're just really surrounded by and embody technology. It becomes a part of you in a very real way. So I don't know. And for a 3 or 4-year-old, what is that? I think for adults, you can sort of be a little bit more, fantastical and far-reaching. But a 3 or 4-year-old, they're at a very, very, very different developmental place. But I think that what cuts across whatever the technology is going to be is the importance of having strong content. I think it's important to not be so enamored with the platform itself.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, a platform affords you certain abilities to do things. But without meaningful, educational, impactful content, there's not really going to be a whole lot going on. So,
well, you're a pretty good futurist. You ought to think about that as a career alternative. Thank you. Mark, very interesting presentation, and the whole notion about open courseware for China. You're a pioneer.
I think so.
You are. You're a pioneer, and that's wonderful. Thinking about the Chinese student market of 30 million boggles the mind, especially for entrepreneurs. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the disruptive technology. You said, and I refer to this in my talk, that TV broadcasts, which is a form of learning technologies, is being replaced with online learning and open courseware. And it's coming relatively slow in China, but it's going to speed up.
Yeah.
What are the implications of that disruption, politically, socially, all other dimensions? What do you see as the implications of this new disruptive technology?
I think this new development for MOOC, it has huge implication on the universities and also the professors. Because on the student side, actually the students are quite open to all different kinds of disruptive new technologies, including like mobile devices, collaborative studying, and all this stuff. They're quite open and welcome. But the major barrier currently right now is the professors. But because from the perspective of some professors, this will work as a threat or even a barrier for them to continue their traditional way of work and their traditional way of education. And under the current evaluation system for professors in Chinese universities, most professors focusing their energies on research and writing papers, but not on the education and training part. But that's what students need because they are going to graduate and find a career. So this open course trend, I think, is going to reshape the schedules of many of the professors and force them to improve their teaching qualities. because currently all the teaching materials and contents are restrained within one small classroom, within 30 people. So you don't have to worry about qualities because your reputation are only influenced by 30 people. But once you open that up, actually you have to worry about the feedback from over like 30,000 people or even 300,000 people. So that's a big challenge for them. They have to repair and reorganize all their materials. Like currently, we are producing 2 courses with Tsinghua universities, and for one course, the professor actually have to reshape all the course materials, all the contents, and check it into like 3-minute pieces, rather than traditionally giving the whole lecture within 4 hours, like for 1 week.
Yes.
So that's a big challenge for them. And also that's a big challenge for the school because we're having extensive internal discussions on like if there is a blended education, then what's the percentage of the online part and what's the percentage of offline part, and how to control the behaviors of students online. Because somebody, maybe they just opened the laptop and they went somewhere else, have fun, and get back and click, okay, I finished my courses. But actually in the real classroom, even physically he's here, but he can also, using his mobile or laptop to do whatever he wants. So it's very difficult to control the activities of students and to monitor the process, because what universities are worrying about is how to give the credits, how to do the verification. So actually a lot of things to be discussed, but personally I think the most challenging part is for the traditional system to get integrated with the online side, and for the professors to reorganize and readjust all the contents to more like internet friendly.
The sustainability of MOOCs is a big issue.
Yes.
In terms of how does a university monetize creating a free open courseware.
Yes,
And you talked
yes.
about authorization and all that. Coursera just was very proud recently that they've finally turned the corner and have started to make money.
Yes.
But you're so right about how these new technologies are disrupting academia. More and more American universities are facing the sustainability issue. Prices rising too high, student debt, and students more and more are beginning to question the credential, the college credential.
Yes.
Open courseware affords students the opportunity, as we said, to get a outstanding education. And I can tell you in my experience that there are still a lot of skeptics in academia. There are still a lot of skeptics in terms of talking about the quality of online learning and MOOCs and what that means. And I'm very interested in thinking about what's the next stage now for MOOCs. Let's look beyond where we are today with MOOCs. What do you think is stage 2?
You then
for
have
MOOCs?
to become a futurist.
A futurist. Well, as an entrepreneur and investor,
Yes.
you've got to be ahead of the market.
Yes, I think the vision are from like 2 sides. The first side is the server side, because if we're only able to provide the contents, then there will be no money coming in. But actually, a lot of students and even universities have a strong will to purchase courses and services from us. Recently, we even received a call from a university in second-tier cities in China, asking us to open like 5,000 accounts for their current students, and that will also be kind of like a marketing behavior for universities to attract high-quality candidates, because we have access to like world's most high-quality courses, and the school are actually willing to pay us for those accounts.
Yes.
And they are willing to like asking us to produce some of the courses they need, which they do not have the capability to open by themselves.
Yes.
Like they even do not have a very good professor for calculus, but that's a first course for most of the engineering students. So they want us to produce a calculus course for them. And the teacher we found is actually not a professor in Tsinghua, but a teaching assistant, postdoc students from Tsinghua, who's very popular in Tsinghua because he's really good at giving lectures on calculus. So that's the first part, is that actually we can provide services to a lot of institutions. And the second part through MOOC, which is not possible using the traditional education way, is we're able to trace the growth and the learning progress for students, even for his whole life. Like he entered our platform like at 16 or for Sesame Street, maybe like 4 or 5. If he completed like his 50% or 70% of his learning online, then we're going to trace his progress. Like when he's 30, he might have a kid, and he might need to learn how to work with kid, how to do the education part. Then we'll push some like education courses to him to teach him, okay, how you can work with your kid. And maybe in the 40s, he can have to deal with insurance or whatever he wants. Okay, then we'll have to design some courses for him. So basically, it's a platform for continuous learning. And with the database and with the user activities online, it's possible for us to customize our courses and adjust it according to the demands on the market, which is not possible for universities. And currently, even Tsinghua is considering using this platform to provide services to alumni. Like some of the alumni, they already graduate for like 2 or 3 years, but actually the school have a very strong intention to keep the interactions between the professors and alumni. And professors can even conduct research. Like for business school professors, they can actually gather a lot of interesting data or even case materials from these alumni.
Yeah, I see sort of 2 trends with massive open courseware. One is being able to leverage learning analytics through MOOCs, because we're talking about massive amounts of data.
Yes.
And I think the use of learning analytics in terms of how people learn, what the impact is on the learning, and being able to talk about best practices and all that. So learning analytics, I think, is really part of the future for that. And I think a second large major trend in MOOCs and in online learning is adaptive learning. How do online courses, online delivery, how do they adjust their delivery according to learners' styles? Yes. Some learners need visualization, other learn in different ways. So I think that may be another step in terms of phase 2 for MOOCs. And in fact, we are doing that now at UMass Boston, with developing MOOCs with an adaptive learning kind of modality, where that courseware is delivered according to the student's learning style. And I think that's important as well. So I thank June, thank you very much, and Mark, thank you very much. And Shuji, do you want to open this up to questions?
Let's give a round of thanks to the speakers for this lively discussion. And now we are opening the platform to the audience. If you have any questions, please line up behind the 2 microphones.
I have a question for Mark. So in thinking about your audience, we have a very different audience that you're talking about, like Chinese students, in terms of the fact that you have a whole generation of students who are accustomed to 60 or more people type classrooms, lecture-based primarily, also a great deal of respect for the teacher as a figure. And this is a very different audience than, let's say, a Western classroom, people who have grown up in Western classrooms. And so you talked a little bit about your research and the questions you're asking. And so I'm wondering, what are the questions that you're asking to sort of know more about how to meet the needs and the learning styles of your audience? And what are the outcomes that you're thinking about when you're thinking about those research questions? Like, is your measure of success learning, or is it access, or is it changing the entire scene? If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Actually, our experiment is also in a very preliminary stage. So the number and amount of data is not quite good yet. But usually, currently, what worried us most is not the outcome of learning, because the first thing is accessibility. It's not the outcome. The current situation in China is that they even do not have the accessibility to some of the courses and some of the high quality materials. So the first thing we have to resolve, actually, yes, you're right, is the accessibility. And I think within 1 or 2 years, when the accessibility issue is done, then we then can start think about evaluating the performance of the students or the teachers. And what currently Tsinghua is thinking about is actually to open these blend courses, either within the campus or working together with a university in the States or in Europe. So students from all over the world can study the same courses, and we can evaluate their performance on the same platform. At the same time, they can invite like teachers from the States to give lectures using online platform. So there will be some like blended classrooms or multinational classrooms in the future. So actually, currently what we're focusing on at the moment actually is accessibility, not evaluating. I think Coursera and edX, they're already moving one step forward on evaluating the performances and tracking the progress of learning. But currently, we're still on the accessibility side.
My first question is for Dr. Jun Li. You mentioned that when initiated in the States, Sesame Workshop was especially targeted at lower income families. And today in China, we're always talking about inequality in terms of the distribution of educational resources. So do you have any plan to expand your impact toward like third tier or fourth tier cities or even rural areas where kids have like a lack of educational resources? And my second question is for Mr. Mark Wang. What age group and social group are the majority of students of online courses at the moment, and who do you really want to target at? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Yeah, we are very aware of this disparity in access to educational opportunities, especially this rural-urban disparity. And that there's an inherent tension that our partner is a Shanghai-based partner. Certainly, Shanghai, relative to the rest of the country, not a place of high need. But we certainly had to start somewhere. And we're working very hard to partner, to syndicate the show, first of all. So we've syndicated the show, the TV series 大牛看世界 with CCTV. So that has nationwide reach. We're also working with more regional broadcasters to be able to extend the reach of the TV series. In addition to that, I had mentioned a community engagement piece of our project. So outside of the TV broadcast, we also do a lot of work with at the school level and the community level. So distributing educational materials targeting parents or children. So for example, that emergency preparedness content, it was distributed in 15 provinces that were more remote provinces that tended to be susceptible to natural disasters. So being very deliberate about, about who we're reaching, making sure that the right content goes to the right communities, but also trying to broaden our reach on the mass media front. And it takes a lot of work, because as you know, China's not an easy market, especially for an outside entity, a US company to enter, very challenging, but we're working hard.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, on the second question. On the customer side, actually currently we are focusing on college students. We all know that MOOC platform can provide education services for students of all ages or all different kinds of backgrounds. But actually as a startup, we have to focus on the area that we are most familiar with and we can get most resources out of. So currently we are focusing on college students, and we are trying to combine the materials from both from higher education than universities to professional skill training and vocational education. So where we can provide a kind of an integrated learning experience for this age of students. But looking to the future, of course, we'll be able to grow together with our learners or with our users to provide what they need. And I don't know whether you've noticed that currently Coursera already started some courses or training services for K-12 teachers or even parents. So I think there is a way for them to tap into the K-12 market, but currently still we're focusing on the college side.
Thank you.
Chinese consumers, they're accustomed to the online materials is free.
they're not willing to pay, the content that is not face-to-face, because they're accustomed to everything from YouTube, Youku that are free. So they would rather pay a premium price for a mediocre teacher face-to-face instead of a very good teacher like me, online. So would you think that is the hardwired differences between Chinese and Western customers, or it is a trait that can be nurtured and cured over time? Because as you know, that like a lot of big companies like Home Depot and Taco Bell, when they're going to Chinese market, they fail because that is the hardwired differences. They cannot cure. They cannot, turn the table. And do you think that's the major difference? And how would you do that if you want to earn the money instead of non-profit from the online business and online tutoring materials? Thanks.
Yeah, to clear, first, we are not a non-for-profit organization. So yes, there is a concern on this. And as I just said, students, many of the students are not willing to pay for videos. So the way we're going to charge them is pay for the service. Like they pay for credit, they pay for verification, they pay for mentoring and tutoring service, and they pay for some of the videos. Like if it's a higher education courses, like the courses given by Professor Jeff Lee, of course the videos are free. But if you want a certificate signed by the professor, then you have to pay. And if you have questions you need to be answered, you have to pay. And the second thing is like we also have some English skill trainings. We're doing experiments, right? Mm-hmm. For that part, it can be significantly cheaper than traditional classroom. And another thing is the accessibility issue, because most of our target clients are not from Beijing or Shanghai. The majority of Chinese Chinese college students are from second tier, third tier, or even fourth tier cities and counties. They simply do not have access to these high quality teachers. And it's not very efficient for them to travel to Beijing for a whole summer to attend like 20 lectures. That's impossible. So actually for that part of the clients, they have a strong will to pay. And even for platform, currently we have seen some interesting user behaviors. Like some of the learners from our English course, they actually already attend a traditional classroom, either in their university or in a local training companies. But still they were willing to pay online because they are willing to learn something better, in better quality, and with better teachers, and with better services. Okay. So actually, for most part of China, I think that the willingness to pay exists.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
One question I'd like to ask you and I'd like to learn from you is, have you ever thought about some side effect that the technology brings to education in short run and the long term, and impacts that overall health and our growth in civilization?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
Do you have an hour?
Well, if I would like to learn from you. 2 hours, 3 hours, that's fine.
No, thank you. Well, I often compare what's happening today with education technologies and the reactions some people are having to when the Gutenberg press was created. The Gutenberg press essentially democratized writing in books. Previous to that, there was no mass sort of distribution of writing. It was only for the elite, and written by monks. And much of the consternation about the Gutenberg press came from the monks because they were essentially losing their jobs and that. And think about what the Gutenberg press did for learning. It allowed more than the elite to access knowledge. And I think about the same thing today, that can you imagine the power of anyone with an internet connection to have knowledge, infinite amount of knowledge with the content throughout the world. And that I think threatens people, some people, but I think it has enormous impact it can have enormous impact on learning, on knowledge, on health. I think about the 15-year-old Mongolian student who got an A in the first MITx course. He never would have had access to that kind of knowledge where he is. He's now a student at MIT, by the way. And I think about health issues around the world as well, and how educational technologies can improve people's lives health-wise, because they now have knowledge they otherwise wouldn't have had. I talked to a lot of people, and they said WebMD has changed their lives because it's kept them better informed about their physical condition and what to do. Prior to that, the only access that they had was one-to-one, face-to-face with their doctor. And we all know how hard it is to get a doctor's appointment today as well. Think about people around the world, the underserved. So I think it's having an enormous impact on people's lives, health, knowledge, and all the rest.
I'm sorry, time is up for this panel. So if you have further questions, you can contact our speakers in private. Thanks.